And honestly, this is a new topic for me, and I'm going, it's not new, it's just a new presentation. And I'm going through and I'm like, this was only supposed to be an hour. So, in the comments, if this just feels like it's too much, let me know. And we'll kind of back off of it a little bit. I think, I'm coming from a space where I do a lot of design work with lessons. And I think that there's some pretty cool things that are kind of inherently embedded within Canvas for us to just be thinking about. And I love the idea or concept of just really designing high quality things that engage our students, but also more importantly, are more accessible for them. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Nicole Carter, and I'm a part of your digital curriculum crew. And if you have any questions as you're building within Canvas, please don't hesitate to ask and email me. My email's just in our district email. It does have an H. I do have an H in my name, Nicole or Nicole. So just remember that as you're typing it out if you need to ask me any questions. So as usual, we should always kind of put a lens on what we're doing. And in this case, we're really talking about accessibility and accessibility features and information design, lesson design. And so that's kind of where this is going, which I think you'll find some things, hopefully maybe some new things, because I found some new things today that will help you through this process. So just really quickly in the chat, I know there's only a few of us, but I'm just curious what role accessibility plays into your lesson design, if at all. And while you're kind of answering that question in the chat, I'm going to also put into the chat the self check-in for us today, and then access to today's slides as well. Most of us might just be sitting here going, no, Nicole, just talk to me. I don't want to, I don't maybe want to participate, which is totally fine. Okay, here is our self check-in. Oh, we've got a new teacher joining us. Thank you so much for coming today. And then again, today's slide deck, like I said, I sometimes, especially when it's a new presentation or a new concept, I have a tendency to just like open the fire hydrant and like let a lot of information out. And so just know that this slide deck is available as a resource for you. So don't feel like you have to be overwhelmed today. You can come back to it at any time. Okay, so Susan, so great to see you. Hopefully you've had a wonderful summer and you've been able to relax a little bit. But I love the idea that you're saying here, you're offering choices in case students have trouble accessing things. And that is exactly one concept we're going to talk about a little bit today. So right on the nail there. Jane saying, I want my students to be able to access recordings of the instruction. As a former flipped classroom teacher, Jane, I don't know if you've been able to watch the video or if you came to the flipped classroom session that I did last week or the week before. I really think video instruction is so helpful for all students because you can watch at your own pace. And especially if we utilize YouTube, instantly students have access to slow or speed up the content. I tend to speed things up, which my 13-year-old daughter always is like, how do you even understand what they're saying? Time is money. I need to listen to it fast. So I speed things up, but you can equally speed things down. And obviously rewinding and rewatching content, if you're at all kind of flummoxed over a topic, is also really good. And in my previous session that I did on Flipped Classroom, we talked about the use of Canvas Studio. And Canvas Studio allows you to add in interactive questions. And from all of the research that we've been able to see, interactive questions help students not be passive when they're watching any kind of instruction or direct instruction in that way. And it has a really high efficiency rate or effective rate in learning new content. So interactive videos are huge. Okay, so yeah, flipped classroom is this idea or concept where you take direct instruction or lecture-based instruction and you maybe put it in a video where kids can watch it as home for homework instead of doing the application of the learning and content as homework, where they don't have access to like to ask questions and to get to get feedback on. So just flipping the main concept or idea of teaching or pedagogy on its head, and providing you more one-on-one interaction with kids as they're applying their knowledge, instead of just that like sage on the stage, teacher at the front of the room talking at students. We're like facilitating learning instead of being the sole purveyor of knowledge. Yes, you can do that in Canvas. And I think that's what we're going to really focus in on today, is that there are some really great things that are kind of embedded within Canvas that allow you to really amp up your accessibility for all students, and at the same time kind of equalize the playing field. So like nobody's aware of the fact that you might be giving one student more time on a quiz, or more opportunities to turn an assignment in, or allowing them, if you teach them how to do it, but allowing them access to speed up or slow down information that you're giving them. And as Susan was mentioning before, providing choices. You can build modules within Canvas that allow students to kind of self-pace. Of course, you have to know your content really well, right? But you can build modules where students can self-pace through the content and then check in with you as needed, which I love that idea. That builds in that engagement, but also kind of personalized education. So we're going to start first with talking about universal design for learning, which is really this idea where we're optimizing the tools that we have to really gain insights to how our students learn, but also to provide more access to them. So this looks different in every class, especially if you have students that in 1 year might need a specific skill set or things from you. If you have a hearing impaired student, if you have a seeing impaired student, whatever, sometimes it might change from year to year. But for the most part, you're focusing on making sure the learners know the goal, that you have built in some flexible options. So again, coming back to that idea of choice, or self-pacing, knowing that you can't necessarily move all students lockstep through the content because they're all learning at different paces. Student access to the resources as well. So again, if you're building digitally, they should have access all the time. And then providing spaces for students to show you what they know, and potentially show you what they know in different ways. So again, like it might be great for student A to turn in a written assignment, but maybe student B wants to record a video because it's easier for them to show what they know when they're just talking about it. And again, those kinds of pieces can be embedded within your assignments in Canvas, and you can allow students to make that choice on how they do that. This is on the screen here where it says accessibility standards in Canvas. This is a button that links you to an article that goes a lot more in depth into some of the pieces that are just inherently built into Canvas. And I'm going to touch on them as we continue to go through today, but it is a good resource. I just want to make sure I pointed that out to you guys. I'm going to refresh my screen just really quickly. And I'm going to go to our chat also, because I'm noticing there was some questions and comments. Yes, I'm going to show, yes, I will show you some specific examples as we kind of go through this. So here we go. Let's, this is a lot of text. So basically the idea of how this, because universal design can be described in how people create cityscapes and stuff, but it also can be applied to our actual design of lessons. So the concept of, again, making sure in general ed class that all students have, different access to things throughout the day, which is best suited to their learning strengths. So for example, I'm going to highlight a module that we built. There's one for elementary and one for secondary that we built for launching the year, that you guys, it's in the Commons already and you can go and look at it. But the idea behind it was that we were thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had this like unit that you could do an advisory homeroom, or if you're in elementary, so, just set aside 15 minutes a day to do this one module that builds skills in Canvas, but then also provides you as the teacher with a ton of information about your students. And so, the first activity is literally asking the students to type out a text response. Again, I'll show you that in a minute. The second one is asking students to record their voice and tell us how they say their name. So that allows for us to know how to pronounce correctly all of our students' names in class. The next assignment asks students, I think, to go through some Google Doc activities, but the fourth assignment is a quiz, a Canvas quiz, specifically on learning styles and strengths. So that's not something you have to grade because it's an automated grading piece in Canvas, but it's going to give you a ton of information on their learning styles. And I think that that could be incredibly helpful as you start to plan both the physical space and the digital space. Not necessarily knowing what things are going to look like in the next couple of weeks. I think we just need to prepare that we could have to pivot at some point. Again, offering more than one way to interact with materials instead of just doing paper pencil tests. Are there ways that you can provide opportunities like we said in Canvas, you can automatically upload either an audio recording or a full video recording. You just have to click those buttons when you're making assignments and discussion threads and stuff like that to allow students to make that choice. And then also ways to engage your students and motivate your students. I know that I was looking at a lot of data when I was in the classroom and I was starting to do like flipped classroom model. And I noticed that some of my honors levels or my SUMA kids were doing fine with watching the videos and taking notes on their own. But my regular general education classes needed a little bit more help. And that's when I switched to providing like the Canvas Studio model, where I had a video that had embedded questions, formative questions for the kids to answer as they watched the video. And that spiked engagement for me. For all of my students. So it's like taking little opportunities like that when you're watching, you know, your formative feedback, whatever it may be, and kind of making those changes to see if you can help build their learning knowledge. Okay, Jane's asking about the Commons. Canvas Studio, okay, Canvas Studio is exactly like Edpuzzle. Jane, you're exactly correct. Now, instead of the pro version of Edpuzzle where you can do like short answer and that sort of thing, right now in Canvas Studio, it only allows you to do 3 different question types. So it's true, false, multiple choice, or multiple answers. So you are slightly limited in that respect, but the data you get back on using that, and you can use your own videos or you can use any videos from YouTube and add those embedded questions. But you get insight into like how long the student watched the video, you know, how they answered their questions, etc. So some ideas, including text, including audio, any kinds of hands-on formats for those that are tactile and need it. The one thing I will say on the text and audio piece here, when you're creating assignments, and I think I referenced this at another point in the slides here too, I pay attention in the rich content editor feature on Canvas. It gives you a word count. And so whenever I'm writing instructions and directions, I'm always watching that word count and I'm trying to keep that word count down, 300 or less if at all possible. And if it spikes, if it goes more than that, then larger chunks of directions or whatever, I will record audio of me reading those instructions, which is super easy to do in the rich content editor and just takes very little time. But just another accessibility piece that I think it's something for us to think about. Again, super easy for you to provide opportunities for oral presentations. I love that we now have also access to Educator Canva, which is like the pro version of Canva, which allows students to have access to templates for like digital posters and group projects. And just like within Google, you can share and collaborate within one space or document. And when you do group projects in Canvas, not to be confused with the fact that I just said Canva, but when you do group projects in Canvas, it cuts down your grading time because they have one person turn it in and then you grade one entry and it gives that same grade to the rest of the group, which is awesome. So, right, like instead of grading all 40 entries, you can grade 10 if you have groups of 4 or whatever. Okay, Teresa's joining us and she says she loves Edpuzzle. Can we transfer those videos? I'm not sure, Teresa, if you can, honestly, because Canvas Studio is kind of like an embedded extra piece. And everything that I've seen so far only has you use, video files that you create or record like a screencast or whatever, or you get a video from YouTube, what I would probably do, so there's no way for you to like upload questions directly in, if that makes sense. So what I would probably do is have, if I have those ed puzzle questions up, and then I would just transfer the time markers at the same point and transfer, copy, paste those questions over, because there's no real way to like immediately transfer the content. Unfortunately, that would make things easier for us, but it doesn't work that way. So some ideas on engagement, some questions to ask: how can I have my students self-pacing, have some choice, have some autonomy? How can I provide things that are relevant to my students? I'm constantly thinking that. Always, I know it sometimes scares people, but how can I potentially use social media? How can I allow, you know, my own daughter the other day created this amazing video edit on one of her favorite shows, but like that, and she just did it on her phone. And I was like, this is crazy. And my wheels started turning. I immediately started thinking, how could I do something like this for like a character analysis assignment or something? Because she was super into it. She sat for 45 minutes just creating this amazing video. So I'm always kind of thinking of those things. How can I provide a space for my students to show what they know, show their interests, and do an assignment that might not be, as an English teacher, I always think might not be your paper pencil, you know, 5-paragraph essay. There's other ways for them to show how they do those things. So any ways that you can gather that kind of information, that module I said before, that launching the year module that can provide you with a ton of information about student interests and strengths. I think that'd be a great way to start the year. Incorporate 15 minutes here and there to work through those lessons. I think the elementary one has like 10 lessons and the secondary one has like 11, because we have access to Kami now at secondary, which we don't have at elementary. So we included a Kami lesson for secondary. I've briefly mentioned this before. So building modules with requirements so students can self-pace, and using groups to allow students to do activities. And again, that cuts down on your grading time because you're grading once for the group. And then also making sure you're stating those learning goals. I'll show you some templates in a minute. I am a big proponent of stating those learning goals and also having sections on my assignments that say literally how to be successful and walking them step by step. And if that's handwriting out the steps, if that's, you know, adding screenshots of how they might turn it in, if that's a video that shows them how they might turn it in, like I'm very cognizant of making sure that they know the end game here. That representation pieces, how can you make sure that you are humanizing the pieces that you're creating and putting on in a digital format? You know, we would never type out something that says, you know, write an answer to this prompt on just a blank piece of paper, 12-point font, Times New Roman, and print that out, make 180 copies and slap that on the desks of our students. We would never do that. Hopefully we've thought through the process of putting something together that is a little bit more engaging than that. So how are we doing that within the confines of assignments, digital assignments? Because we're moving forward with that, right? So yeah, thinking about your use of color and font sizes. You know, students have these little Chromebooks. I have one right over here. The Chromebooks are smaller than usually our teacher laptops. And, you know, 12-point font is really tiny on their tiny little laptop. So that's one thing I automatically do is I up the font size of the text in my directions. But again, offering those options for engaging with text to speech. We do have access to read, write, that gives them those text to speech options. I use the text to speech all the time. That's one thing I've talked with a lot of teachers that we need to do more often and model more often. I use that text to speech all the time, especially when I try and get my efficiency going. But there is a kind of negative connotation of text to speech in class for some reason. So the more we model it and the more we use it, then I think the more students will also access it and use it in class when they're having to do any kind of written assignments. And then, like I said, pay attention to those directions, try really hard to keep it minimal. Use, large size font, use bullets where possible. And if you do have a lot of text and instructions, think about doing some audio responses. This was a new feature that I found today, actually. I didn't realize that this was there. I probably have been told about it before, but I haven't actually looked at it. When you're making any content in Canvas, you have the ability to do an accessibility check. So one of the reasons we use Canvas, besides the fact that it's a walled garden for student data privacy and that sort of thing, but also it just has these checks and balances for ADA compliance. Every time you upload an image within Canvas, it automatically asks you for a descriptor, for alt text for the image. You can always check off the button below it that says, decorative image, but if you do have a student that has, visual needs, and you need to maybe do a little bit more when you're adding the image directions or description. But you also have down at the bottom, and you'll actually see on the screen, see how right next to it, it says 110 words. That's what I was talking about before, where you get your word count. So I am always looking down in that bottom area for my word count. And it's weird that I've never really pressed this button, but this little button next to the word count is the accessibility checker, and it will go through and look at what you have and give you some examples and issues that you might want to change and think about. So I think that's really great. And then as you go through your issues and you fix those issues, then you confirm and save, and you can move forward. So I think that that's really a great tool that more teachers should know about. So some more ideas of thinking about how students might be able to move through. This is hard. The flexible timing and pacing, I think, is sometimes hard. And it's a shift. It's going to take some time. Before I moved to the district level, I was to the point where I was letting my kids, I was like, okay, I know I need, again, I was an English teacher, but I know my kids need to write in the 3 modes of writing. So 3 essays in the first semester, and I need to hit these reading targets. I want them to do this. And I started building modules to support that. I had video instruction to support each of the, writing modes, and some teacher checkpoints. I didn't even care if one group of students, if these 5 students wanted to start working on a narrative example and these 10 students wanted to start working on a reading target. I was totally fine with that, because at this point I was facilitating. I was freeing myself up from being at the front of the class, and then instead moving and working in small groups to help with interventions and wherever students were at in their learning journey. I was facilitating. But that's like the far end of the spectrum, right? So how do we find a place where we feel comfortable with that? Again, you have to know your content. You have to have it built out in a digital format enough to be able to do that. But the digital platform itself allows you to do these kinds of things, which is freeing. You kind of clone yourself a little bit. So some ideas to think about: you have access to, calendars and checklists to help students kind of better take on autonomy within what they're doing. You can really think about how students access the course navigation, how they are looking at, doing projects and format. Again, all of this stuff I've kind of already said, that text to speech piece. Yeah. So I'm kind of moving ahead because I feel like I'm being a little bit redundant. One thing to think about also is accessibility matters when you're communicating with the community, with parents. And so I think taking into account, how you're sending out messages. A lot of our digital platforms automatically account for, different languages spoken at home. Like if you stay within those platforms, there will be an automatic translation for parents at home. So be thinking about that. Also, again, thinking about how our students are accessing different things, thinking about how it might seem on a small Chromebook that they have access to, but also if our students are accessing things on their mobile device at some point too. Maybe they go home and it's easier or faster to be on their mobile device using, unlimited data or something instead of, their Chromebook from school. So there's a couple of different things to keep in mind as we're putting that kind of information out into the world. The last piece we're going to briefly talk about before I go into a live demo is just like information design. This is something that I kind of personally die on a little bit. Yes, Susan, thank you for bringing up Parent Square. It will really help. So Parent Square obviously is something that is new this year. So if you haven't had any training on that, we've had a couple of them for PD on the patio so far. And hopefully we have those recorded so you can watch them at your leisure if you haven't watched them yet. But yeah, we're constantly thinking about that ADA compliance and thinking about translation services to communicate out to our community, right? So yeah, I think we just need to remember that the community, students and parents are savvy consumers of really high-end, high-designed content. And, you know, it's just not going to cut it if we're using the same worksheet from 20 years ago. Like, we've got to kind of get into a different mindset. Now, this you don't necessarily have to know, but it is like the principles of information design. I have like a little worksheet over here that I found from someone on Instagram, I think, that is given out to elementary students for art class that breaks it down in kind of a smaller, you know, little kid fashion. But understanding good information design goes a long way into changing how you might be designing content in Canvas for students. And there's some things to think about, you know, all of the data that we've been able to see from a district or admin dashboard plan here is that when people are creating in Canvas so far, they're really only making assignments. Occasionally they might be making pages, but for the most part, most of the staff aren't really touching quizzes or discussions. I happen to think discussions are one of the best things that we have access to in Canvas. I know our world language teachers are really utilizing quizzes because of the features of doing video recording or audio recording. But I'd love to see people stretching their legs a little bit in some of the pieces that they're using in Canvas. If a student doesn't have to turn in anything, you just have information you want to give them, well, then you're using pages in Canvas. If they need to turn something in, and it really only needs to go to you as the teacher, and they wouldn't necessarily benefit from the community of the classroom, then you're using an assignment. If they would benefit, but benefit from someone else besides you looking at what they're turning in, but maybe it's like special information that shouldn't go to the whole class, but maybe they have like a writing partner, a table partner, a lab partner, you can do what's called peer reviews in Canvas. And even when you do peer reviews, if you attach a rubric to it, the students can use the rubric when they're doing peer reviews, and that is fantastic. And so that is something I'm asking myself, if the communication needs to be beyond just me, but maybe it's too special of information, then maybe an elbow partner, a lab partner, whatever, I might do a peer review. And you can do an anonymous peer review, just random peer review, or you can manually go in and make sure that you're pairing them with their writing partner, lab partner, whatever. If the students would benefit from a community response, then that's where we go to discussion threads. And discussion threads, beyond being just like a writing prompt or something, is a great space for students to have an authentic audience, just automatically built into Canvas. You don't have to bring in an outside source. So I really would love to see more teachers using discussions. And then quizzes, like I said, you could do a lot with quizzes, surprisingly. I think it fits really nicely with our world language because you can do responses that are recorded audio or video, but there's a lot more you can do with quizzes, and they've got like a newer quiz feature too, where you can build stuff out in a different way. So quizzes is something that you could use definitely for quick formative assessments. All right, so I know you guys were asking for specific examples. So that's kind of what we're going to dive into right now. So after everything we've kind of talked about, thinking about information design, thinking about, you know, access, UDL, this is an assignment I just found, and just wondering what your thoughts on this assignment. What do you notice after everything I've kind of said so far? This is obviously a preview, but once you get into, this is what it looks like. So it looks like it has as submission options, a text box entry, a media recording, and a file upload. It's not worth any points. And then the directions just say each student will make a list of 3 facts about themselves. 2 facts must be true, 1 must be false. And you will address the class by stating your name, your age, and then your 3 facts. Any thoughts on this in terms of information design or UDL? Again, the UDL pieces: engagement, representation, ability to express yourself by your final product, and then some principles of design when we're thinking about engaging our students and how we're giving directions.
Hey, Nicole, I just shut my mute off. So
Yeah,
I just
sure.
wanted to say hi. Hey, the assignment, someone already said, I think James said, that it's not very exciting. Not a lot of visuals going on here.
Right.
Not really anything all that interesting for the students to do. So I'm not really seeing a lot of buy-in from them on why this would be something that they would be excited to do.
Right. I think that's good. I will say, in terms of the expression or ways to turn in, the fact that this has text entry as well as media recording and file upload, that does give some measure of options. If a student decided to go into like Adobe Spark and create some sort of image or something, of course, that's not in the directions itself. That'd be, a student taking it upon themselves to go out and do it, but it's providing at least that much. For me, again, not a lot of images or engagement happening here. So I do think that that's,
yeah, it would be really good to have maybe a funny example that they could see of one that's done. I think that would help a lot.
I think so too. Okay, so I'm going to go into this. I gave you a GIF here, but I'll go in and show you an example. It's pretty much the same lesson, a 2 truths and a lie. These 2 buttons will lead you to the unit I've been talking about, or the modules I've been talking about so far, the secondary and elementary versions. But this is what that looks like. So I'll go into my 2 truths and a lie. Now, this specific unit, we were again trying to scaffold skills. So the skill on this one is just a text entry. But you'll notice right away that we've got some examples. There's some icons. We're trying to label what's true and what's false. We really wanted them to just do a text entry so that they knew how to do it. And then it does ask, if you feel like you're up to it, let me know. Because I'm going to create, and this is up to the teacher, but I'm going to create a Kahoot with your answer so that we can engage with that, if you're okay with it. If not a Kahoot, I think I also gave options to teachers to do a slide deck if they didn't want to do a Kahoot, but another way to take the information here and share it out with the whole class if they feel comfortable with it. And then, as I mentioned before, that how to be successful idea. In this instance, I'm giving very quick 1, 2, and 3. And then I did provide like a little GIF that just repeats itself. Start assignment, type your answer, and that sort of thing. Now I'm going to go to the next option, because I just want to show in this module, we're really trying to honor that idea. So we've got, this is the title. Here's your instructions. All of the instructions, by the way, you can hopefully see the text is just normal Arial, I think. And might have to go back into my text because at some point there are three fonts specifically that are really good for anyone that is trying to use the speech to text to read back. And Arial, unfortunately, even though it's like a really boring font, Arial is one of those that is really good for people needing the text to speech option. And I'm trying to find it in my notes. Hold on one second. But anyways, leaving it in the main font choice, but then I again up the size of the font. Usually, here we go. It's on slide 20 in the notes, and it is Arial, Myriad Pro, and Times New Roman. Those 3 fonts, even though they're kind of boring, are the most versatile fonts for translation purposes and for speech to text purposes, and for those that need an easy to read font. So Arial, Myriad Pro, and Times New Roman. And those are in the notes as well on slide 20. But again, directions, trying to keep them short and simple, but then here's a different version. This is a full-on video showing or walking students through how to record their response and upload it, or submit it for Canvas. So, are there accessibility issues for fancier fonts? Yes, sometimes there are. But yes, I think it, again, it depends. If you have students in your classroom that need access to a specific style of font, or you're, thinking about having translation services happen, then sticking to those fonts, I think, is going to be really helpful. But if it's not something you necessarily need to think about, then fancier fonts, go ahead, because sometimes those can be more engaging for students. But I think I'm going to come back to my slide deck now, but you're getting this idea where I'm trying really hard to stick to kind of a template. This is how you need to, this is what you need to be successful. And, this might not be something you have to do, mid-year to the end of the year, because hopefully at this point they know your expectations and how to turn stuff in on Canvas. But at the beginning of the year, I think having things like this that clearly define, here's how you turn it in, here's the steps, and being really clear on that is going to be really helpful.
So Nicole, can
yes.
I just interject? I remember during the pandemic, during CDL, actually going into Canvas and going in student mode and showing students exactly what I wanted them to do. Are we still going to be able to do that this year in terms of being able to get into student mode and
of course
how to do that?
Yes, of course. And I think the only thing to think of is I have noticed that there are times when I'm using maybe an external tool, like I've added a Google Doc or slide template or something, or Adobe Spark or something. Sometimes when I'm using an external tool, or what we call LTI, the student view isn't possible sometimes when we're doing that. So just be thinking of that. But for the most part, yes, you will obviously, and I think it's even easier now. You don't have to go back into settings and find student view. There's a student view button now on every page in Canvas.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so some things to think about when you're putting together some lessons. Directions and or prompt, we would never just roll into a class and just start playing a video, right? Normally we set the video up. We're like, okay, guys, we're going to watch a video about this. Here's what I want you to pay attention to. So just like with that in class example or dynamic, we should be putting that into our digital lessons as well. Step-by-step instructions for how to be successful. Anytime you can do that. Here's an example where we just were using screenshots. I like Teresa's example of being able to do it live and direct. Again, that larger font, size 14 or 18, is going to be really helpful. And then thinking about navigation for students, I think is really helpful. When you're building in modules, they get the forward and back button, but if they need to be processed back to, I always like to use what I think of as kind of like table of contents, where I give information. In fact, let me go and show you that. So like most of the time when I build in these little home buttons, and the home button goes back to this table of contents, or the unit, kind of the unit overview. So in this instance, it says, here's what this unit is about. Again, how to be successful. These are like the targets, and they're like to-do list or table of contents. So each of these links to the actual assignment. Sometimes I might even put like the points that the assignments are worth or something. It just depends on what class it is for. So they link back to each other. But again, it's like a home page for that module or for that unit. So, okay, going back. So other things that I've done, the Chromebooks are different from our MacBooks. So, I have found super helpful to grab, these images. I just do a search, Chromebook keyboard, and, we'll pull that image in, and then we'll, highlight in like a slide deck or something. Here's what button you need to push. And sometimes I don't know. Most of us don't have access to the student Chromebook. So sometimes I'll do a search. How do you screenshot on a Chromebook? And then usually it just pops up with really quick responses or an answer. And I just copy and paste that in. So keeping those kinds of things in mind, I think would be helpful. That user experience, like I said, again, touchscreen. How can you maybe utilize their stylus? All of the Chromebooks come with a stylus. So really, if you haven't looked at Kami yet, because we now have access to Kami for secondary, that would be a great way to utilize some of your worksheets that you maybe already have, keep it digital, let the kids use the stylus to mark up with their touchscreen Chromebook. But yeah, thinking about the fact they have these tiny little screens and how they're accessing your information.
Just to clarify, Nicole, can I just ask you a quick question?
Uh-huh.
So are you saying that all the students this year will have a stylus with their Chromebook, and so, or only some of them?
No, they all should. Now I should say this with a caveat. I don't know if this is still happening, but there was one high school in particular that was so nervous that their students might break or lose their stylus that they took all of the styluses out of the Chromebook and kept them in the library and did not give the students access to them. That was shocking and not what we want as a district. We chose that Chromebook for a reason, because it had a stylus. So yes, all of your students should have a Chromebook with a stylus at this point. Yes, those are the newer ones that were cycled through, and I think at this point all students should hopefully have access to that.
So exciting. Thank you.
Yeah. So one tip or trick that I do is I will sometimes have just like a random slide deck where I will take screenshots and put it in the slide deck, and then just use, Google Slides and do little arrows and things and type out how to do that. So I think if you click on here, it will take you to like a random slide deck where I have done that. So you can just get an idea. But I don't want you to spend a ton of time in making sure that those instructions are there. But I do think at the beginning of the year, it's really helpful. A couple of other things to think about when you're doing module work. I think when you're building, it starts top to bottom. There's icons that identify for people what the different things are. I've seen teachers use emojis to help like guide their students to specific things. So every time there was like one particular assignment, they used a purple heart or something, and that made it easier for students to navigate to that particular assignment. You also can use text headers as well. You see that with the number 2 response. So that just helps you to build some hierarchy in the modules. Again, I use these things instead because I think the modules are overwhelming. And I like to use these where I can build in buttons and like organize stuff a little bit differently than just a module. But I know that's not everyone's preference. So that's just something to think about. I think Canvas, it's a big learning curve, but you can really modify it and make it work for you and for your students, depending on how you want to do that. Okay, so we've kind of gone through a whole bunch of information. Luckily, it's not 45 minutes, so that's pretty good. I was thinking I was going to go way over. What more would be helpful in this discussion as we're thinking about accessibility and design? One thing that we've heard, especially at secondary, is that we want teachers to continue moving forward with using Canvas for daily lessons and digital submission. And we don't know what's going to happen, especially currently with the news and everything. Like I don't know. I haven't even read the governor's letter, but I got a message from another teacher in Oregon yesterday. Did you read the letter? What are your thoughts? What's happening in fall? I have no idea. But I think the more that we're cognizant of building digitally and thinking about how we did things last year and kind of using that to swing forward into next year, I think we'll be better off if we have to do a quick pivot. Not saying that will happen, but if we do. Okay, so Teresa, can we get a template for the launching your model? So yeah, so if you go into the Commons, you can search by my name, or there is a button somewhere back here. What slide was it on? Slide 23. Go back. So here it takes you straight to the Commons, but if you just go into the Commons from Canvas, so your global navigation on the left-hand side, the Commons is right here. And the commons, again, is just that space where if you've created something that you want others to be able to access it, you can share it to the commons, and then people can download it and mess around with it. You can search by keyword and grade level. So if you haven't gone through the commons, do that. No need to reinvent the wheel. I have a hard time sometimes when I'm in the comments because I quite frankly don't find things that I think are built to my to my standards in terms of, you know, information design and universal design. So I sometimes will find something and then I will rework it, remix it so that it fits what I think is better. But yeah, you can search for either launching the year, my name, and that should bring you to those modules that I was showing you. And then yeah, you can use that as a template. I love that idea. When you're in modules, you know, you can at any time you can go in and just hit duplicate, and then that becomes like your template, right? And then you can erase whatever and use it as your own. So how do you create the how-to slides, circling buttons or numbering? Susan, explain what you're thinking on that. Are you talking about like the GIF that it cycles back?
Yeah, when you were doing showing us oh, here's what it looks like on their Chromebook, and then some button was circled in red, and then you showed some things and they were on the module and they were numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have no clue how to make these wonderful things to help students.
Yeah, okay, so this
Do that.
okay, so this I did in a Google slide deck. So this was an image of the lesson itself, and then these are just numbers on a Google slide, and this is just an arrow. So let's see. For example, if you click on this guy, it kind of just shows you that I'm just using Google Slides to build buttons and to you know, I'm just taking a screenshot from Canvas, and then within Google Slides, I'll add those other content pieces. So like this was, I was recording media in Canvas on a Saturday morning with no makeup, my hair in a sloppy bun. I looked awful. And I wanted to use this as an example. So I just put my Bitmoji over my face because I didn't want them to see, I didn't want them to see my, like, you know, sloppy bun and everything. So this, I just build it out in, let's see if I can grab it. Cause that, hold on. Canvas student direction slides is what it's called. So let me go into my Google Drive so you can I can just show you. I think oh, can I just open that? I want to be in edit mode, not view. I think sometimes I just default to Google Slides because it's something I'm used to and comfortable with, right, Susan? I don't want to like have to learn a new program or something. So this whole square is just, I took a screenshot of, you know, let's say I'm in Canvas, and maybe I go into student view so that I can see what a submission might look like from a student's perspective. So I click student view. And I do have to say start assignment, but this might be something where I would screenshot, you know, this, right? So, and so that they saw the start assignment button. So I hit start assignment, and now down here, I get this text entry. So this might be my screenshot here. And I move that into my slide deck, and I point out what I want them to do. So these are just individual arrows in Google Slides and like a box, you know, like a shape here, right? I'll just draw a shape. And I'll change maybe the color, red. I might make it bigger so that it sticks out, right? And then I add like an arrow or something. And the arrow you can find here. So I'll just do like an arrow, and then I'll change the color. I'll go red. And then this is 8-point font on that. Normally it defaults to like 1, which looks like this. right? And I want it to be bigger. So I'll go to like 8 and that makes it a nice big arrow. And then I just would take a picture of this and put that into Canvas.
Wow. Okay.
But once you have it done once, then what's cool, I'm going to leave soon. So then I love this new added feature in Canvas, because before, if you remember, once you uploaded an image, you had to hunt to find it, but now you can search by what you called it. So if you have an image, let's just say I'm going to put an image here. So if I go into course images, if I had one called text entry, and it looks like, oh, I had something for text. There you go, right? Like I could just add that in. I just click it and it adds it in. So once I've done it once, I can use it again and again and again on different assignments. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one I have down here is a little bit fancier. It's a moving video that recycles. And for that, I'm using this little Chrome extension called Chrome Capture. And that just allows me to put a little screen and then I hit record and I do whatever it is I'm doing. And it records it and then puts it into this tab that I can then save. And that's pretty simple. That's just this extension here, Chrome. Do you know how to add an extension?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chrome Capture is that one to do if you're going to walk them through a little video of how to do it. That's what that is.
Hey, Nicole, do you have a good website to find button templates for?
Yes.
Because I was creating my own and they were pretty ugly.
Oh, let me show you this. This is so exciting. What a wonderful thing for you to say, Jane. Okay, here's I want to make your life so easy. Okay, so we now have Canva, like the pro version, which is awesome. For some reason it's free for educators. And I don't. So here's what I'm going to tell you. You go into Canva and you sign on with like your just normal email, and underneath their templates, they have this new one called Classroom Decor Kits. And the only reason I'm pointing this out is because what they've done is they've kind of taken different themes or whatever and grouped them together. Some are better than others. But you can take, I'm going to go back to this modern sticker one. So you could use these, even though they're like supposed to be name tags for kids, but you could use these for buttons. Or some of them have better button templates, I think, than others. There's some that are round. Or under templates, you could also go into right here where it says logos. And some of the logos are like round in shape. And you could, you could find something that you like here, and then that could become your button.
So you can change them.
Yeah. So let's say, I don't know, let's say I like this. I'm just going to say customize your template. And I can change any of the colors. Like maybe I don't want it this pale pink and I can just go into white. And maybe I want this a different color too. I can make it blue, I guess. I can go in here where it says studio and I can say math. Or I could do math up here. Right? And then there's your math button. You could say like resources. Looks like I need to do a little bit. There we go. I mean, and then all I would do is just do a screenshot of this. Honestly, I would just do a quick little screenshot. Now, one thing I will mention, when you screenshot stuff and upload it later, I highly recommend I create as a screenshot and it goes onto my desktop. I don't want to upload it into my Canvas with the phrase screenshot. So I always right click and I say rename and I will say math button, right? And then I will go into my Canvas course. So then when I'm in my Canvas course, I would upload it and then I could look for it again, as I showed you that search function. Instead of searching through all screenshots, I can search for the math button and be able to find it easily. You can always go in and change your files too. If I go in here to files, I can go into any of my course images and look to see if there's anything that is labeled screenshot and change it, which I often do. But I do that because I know I'm sharing some of this stuff with people. Like, I think my coworker might have made that one. So you can always see what it is. Viewing page. So I can go in and rename viewing page. So that it's, you know what I mean? It's not labeled screenshot in the future and I can find it easier. One of the things I mentioned before is your navigation. Anytime you can go through and eliminate stuff that your students don't need in this navigation bar, I would really recommend it. So for instance, this one has like outcomes not visible to students. So, going into your settings and going into the navigation section and dragging and dropping any of these that you don't think your kids need, I would just highly recommend. If you're not using badges, move that down. If you're not right now using WeVideo, move that down. If they don't need to see the people, move that down. And then, always hit save. I might want people up there. And hit save. And then that way they don't have extra stuff over here. You have it as the teacher of the course, you can still see it. But anything that has this like eye, that means they don't see it, and that's less on the screen for them. You can also teach them too, if they click up here, it hides that. So if I go back to like this home screen, if I click up here, it hides that navigation section, which could also be helpful for students if they get overstimulated. So hopefully that answered that question. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just looking to see where I find Canva. Is that on our staff internet, or is that something?
I'm not sure if it's on there, but if you go into any of your classes on here, it is. You can click here, Canva for Education, or if you just type canva.com and go and log in, that'll take you there as well. I'll mention that we don't have it in the staff intranet bookmarks, so we should maybe put it in there. But it's attached to your Canvas. It should be there, Canva for Education. And then you can just go to canva.com as well. Canva is great. Just so, in terms of like thinking, oh, Nicole's asking me to become this like graphic designer. No, use things like Canva, Adobe Spark. I have a couple of other ones up here for slide decks, like Slide Carnival or Slides Mania, that have templates already built that look really fantastic that you can use as well. So that you don't have to be a graphic designer. Use stuff that's already available. Yes, Teresa, can you believe it's free? I know. I told the guy, Chris and I just did a Canva and Canvas integration, and because it's new and nobody knows about it. And I told the dude, I said, I cannot believe you're giving this to us for free. Like, this is insane. I paid. This is like one of the only products I personally paid for the pro version. That's how much I love it. Like, I was paying, I think like 120 a year or something. So the fact that I wasn't going to not pay for it at first. I said, do we get everything that the pro version gets? Because if we don't, I'm going to keep paying for it. But we do. I haven't found anything that we don't get as educators. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. So yeah, play around with that. Really, those templates. I maybe you guys don't think so, but I really think this could be a lot of fun, where they've got all of these different kits, paired together with different templates. To me, that just makes things so easy. But yeah, play around with Canva. I think that's a really great option. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to stay on. But we're at 2:00. And yes, end of the thing survey, fill that out so that you can get some swag, including swag from Canva. Actually, they gave us a ton of stuff. It's right here. I'll throw it in the chat.